He sat at the edge of the exam table, trousers folded neatly across his lap, hands resting like he was holding something precious that no longer worked. "Doc, I don't know what's happening," he said, eyes low. I look down, and it doesn't look like mine anymore. That's a hard thing for a man to admit. He didn't mean just appearance. He meant something deeper, a shift in the way his body responded, or didn't. A softening he couldn't name, but he could feel it in how he moved, how he touched, how he held his wife in the quiet hours. I've heard that story many times over the years. Each one a little different, but all circling the same truth. Aging doesn't just show up in your knees or your eyesight. Sometimes it shows up in the place you least expect, the part of you you thought would always be there, quietly reliable. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. I spent more than 4 decades sitting with men, soldiers who once marched into war, farmers with hands worn from work, grandfathers who held newborns in trembling arms. And I've listened, truly listened, to the quiet ways their bodies have changed with age, especially when it comes to the part no one ever talks about, their manhood. If this message speaks to you, type 1. If you're unsure, type 0. Either way, thank you for being here. It means more than you think. Let's begin. You see, most men believe their penis just stops working when they get older. They blame desire, or maybe low testosterone. They think it's just about performance. But the truth is, what's happening runs deeper. It's not just about sex. It's about structure, real, physical changes that happen in silence, long before the symptoms show up. That's the part no one tells you. The penis, like any other part of the body, is made of tissue muscle, vessels, nerves, elastic fibers. And with time, those tissues begin to lose their shape and strength. Not all at once. Slowly, quietly. I remember one man in his 60s, a teacher, retired early, still sharp in the eyes but worn in the way he walked. He leaned in close, voice low, and said, "I don't feel like myself anymore." He wasn't talking about memory or energy. He was talking about his penis. You might look the same on the outside, but inside, there's a quiet erosion taking place. A loss of tone, a fading of responsiveness. The smooth muscle that once held firmness starts to soften. Blood doesn't fill the chambers the way it used to. Even the nerves, those tiny filaments of sensation, begin to dull. And perhaps worst of all, you start to notice. Not just in the bedroom, but in the mirror, in the way you carry yourself, in the way you remember who you used to be. But this isn't a hopeless story. Because when you understand what's really happening, you can take steps, meaningful, lasting steps, to protect your function and your identity. Let's look a little deeper. Inside the penis, there are 2 chambers, the corpora cavernosa. They're not just empty spaces, they're surrounded by smooth muscle, a living tissue that must be healthy in order to trap blood and hold firmness. But as we age, this muscle begins to deteriorate. When I press on the tissue during an exam, I can feel it in a younger man. It pushes back. There's tone, life. But in some older men, it feels spongy, like a loaf of wheat bread. That's not just a poetic image, it's a clinical sign that the structure is starting to fade. And when that structure fades, it's not just about erections, it's about identity, that subtle shift in how you feel in your own skin. And there's another layer to this. The sheath that wraps around the penis, called the tunica albuginea, also begins to stiffen over time. It loses elasticity. So even if blood flows in, it can't be held the same way. The result? Erections feel softer. They fade faster. They lose that density you once counted on. Now, you might be wondering, what causes this breakdown? And why does it happen to some men faster than others? There's one quiet, powerful answer: testosterone. Most men think of testosterone as the sex hormone, but in truth, it's the fuel that maintains the entire structure of your penis. It keeps smooth muscle healthy. It supports nerve endings. It even affects blood vessel flexibility. But here's the hard part. Testosterone starts to decline in your 30s, not in a dramatic crash, but in a slow leak year after year. By the time you hit 60 or 70, you might have less than half the testosterone you had in your youth. And many men don't even know it. They blame stress, work, aging, and never get their levels checked. Meanwhile, The tissues lose strength. Sensation fades. Intimacy becomes more of a memory than a living part of the day. I've had men sit in my office, full of grief, not because they're broken, but because they feel like they've lost a piece of themselves, and no one ever warned them. But this isn't where the story ends. In fact, it's where it begins to turn. Because some of what you're seeing in the mirror or not seeing may not be what you think. If you're finding this helpful or you're just starting to think differently about your health after 60, consider hitting the subscribe button. That way, you won't miss future insights made just for men like you. Let's talk now about one of the most misunderstood changes of all, one that leads many men to feel smaller, even when the size hasn't truly changed. There's a phrase I've heard whispered more times than I can count. Doc, I swear, it's shrinking. It's spoken with a mix of confusion and quiet shame, as if admitting it might make it worse. But here's the truth. That feeling, it's real. You're not imagining it. But what most men don't realize is that the change they're noticing might not be the penis itself. It might be everything around it. See, as we age, our bodies start to redistribute fat, especially in the lower abdomen. One of the most common places it gathers is the pubic area right above the base of the penis. That fat pad begins to grow. And as it does, it presses down. It swallows part of the visible shaft. So, while the length of the penis hasn't actually changed, it looks shorter. It feels shorter. And because appearance is tied so deeply to confidence, the impact runs deeper than the surface. Add to that the weakening of the pelvic floor, those muscles beneath the hips that support everything in the lower body. When those muscles soften, the way your penis rests, the way it angles, even how it responds, begins to shift. It's a kind of quiet betrayal, not from one organ, but from the systems that hold it all in place. The good news? This illusion can be reversed. I've watched men reduce pubic fat, strengthen pelvic muscles, and regain visible length, sometimes more than an inch, without surgery, without pills, just through consistency, attention, and the right habits. But when these changes go untreated, something else begins to set in, something more lasting. I call it the wheat bread penis. Now, that might sound funny at first, but stay with me. For years, I struggled to describe the exact feel of what I'd find during a physical exam. Then one day, it clicked. Soft, spongy, no resistance. Like pressing on a slice of wheat bread. In younger men, the penile tissue has tension of firmness even when flaccid. That tone comes from healthy, smooth muscle, from blood vessels that can expand and contract, from nerves that still send sharp signals. But in older men, especially those with declining testosterone or poor circulation, that tone is lost. The tissue feels loose, mushy. It offers no pushback under pressure. It's not just about sensation anymore. It's about structure. And structure matters. Because once that architecture is compromised, once the internal scaffolding begins to fail, even the best intentions, the strongest desire, can't compensate. Blood won't stay where it's supposed to. Firmness fades. Confidence follows. But here's where hope enters the room. These changes, while real, are not always irreversible. If you act early, if you care for your body the way you would care for an old, beloved tool, gently, consistently, respectfully, you can hold the line. And in some cases, you can rebuild what you feared was gone. I've seen men in their 70s regain sensation. I've seen marriages rekindled, not because of a pill, but because of renewed presence. But you must know where to begin. The first step is understanding that aging is not a sentence. It's a signal, a call to care more deeply, not less. So, can you reverse it? The answer is yes, but only if you start before the softening becomes permanent. One man comes to mind, Robert, age 69, retired plumber, grew up fixing things with his hands, said to me once, "I didn't think I could fix myself." But he was wrong. With proper hormone therapy, pelvic work, and lifestyle changes, his erections improved, his energy came back. Even his wife said his voice sounded different, stronger somehow. It's not about perfection. It's about momentum. And that momentum comes from what I call the 4 pillars of penile longevity. These are the fundamentals I give every man who wants to age with strength and dignity. First, circulation. Your penis is a vascular organ. Without healthy blood flow, nothing else matters. That means walking every day. That means leafy greens, beets, cutting out processed sugars. It's not glamorous, but it works. Second, testosterone. This isn't about boosting libido. It's about preserving the tissues, the vessels, the nerves. If your levels are low, and most men over 60s are addressing, it can change everything. Third, pelvic floor strength. Most men ignore these muscles, but they're essential. They support the base of the penis, control bladder function, and play a key role in maintaining erection quality. A few minutes a day of targeted exercises can make all the difference. And finally, metabolic health. Excess belly fat, blood sugar spikes, and chronic inflammation all accelerate tissue breakdown. They're like termites in the walls, silent but destructive. I've watched men commit to these 4 areas and reclaim more than just physical function. They reclaim presence, self-respect, that quiet sense of, I'm still here. But for many men, this commitment comes too late. And when they finally sit across from me, often with tears in their eyes, they say one thing over and over again. I wish I had known this sooner. Not one man, not 10, hundreds. They don't regret getting older. They regret not knowing how to meet age with strength. No one told them what would happen. Their doctors never mentioned it. Their friends didn't talk about it. And so they assumed this slow loss was their fault. Or worse, their fate. But here's the truth. It's neither. It's biology. It's life. And it's still in your hands. Whether you're 60, 70, or even older, your body is still listening. Maybe not as loudly, maybe not as quickly, but it hears you, and it wants to heal. It's never too late to care for what matters most. And sometimes, all it takes is a single choice. One walk, one stretch, one appointment, one whispered conversation with someone who finally understands. We'll close this journey in a moment. But before we do, I want to leave you with a message. Not just about what's happening to your body, but about the kind of man you still are. Because that man, he's not gone. He's just waiting to be remembered. I've sat with men in their 70s, 80s, even 90s, who came in not for a prescription, but for a quiet truth. One of them, a World War II veteran, told me, "Doc, I just want to feel like I'm still in here somewhere." He pointed to his chest, but I knew he meant more than that. He meant the man he used to be, the one who once stood taller, touched with confidence, felt desire like a current flowing just under the skin. That's what so many men are chasing when they walk through my door. Not vanity, not conquest, but memory, dignity, presence. And here's the truth. It's still there. That man hasn't left. He's just gone quiet, buried beneath the noise of aging, loss, and the slow erosion of attention we give to ourselves. But the body remembers. And if you care for it gently, consistently, respectfully, it begins to remember you too. I've seen it with my own eyes. A man begins walking again, not to break records, but to feel his legs under him. He starts stretching in the mornings, eats one more vegetable, drinks one less soda. He breathes deeper. He sleeps earlier. And somewhere, in that quiet commitment, the blood flows again. And where blood flows, life returns. Not like it used to, not like a switch being flipped, but like a garden slowly waking up after winter. The mornings start to feel different. That quiet fullness, the kind that says you're alive, returns. You sit and you notice something, not quite like it was, but better than it's been. You carry yourself with a little more edge, a little more ease. That's what Harold found. He was the one I mentioned before, widowed, withdrawn, unsure. But he chose to act. He chose to care. And 6 months later, his tone changed. "I feel like I came back to myself," he told me. "Not 20 again, but enough." That phrase stuck with me. But enough. Enough to stand without apology. Enough to sit across from someone and feel attractive, even if no words are spoken. That's what this is all about. Not chasing youth, but restoring presence. Because the man you were isn't gone. He's just waiting to be remembered. So, what can you do? Where do you begin? Here's what I tell every man who sits across from me and asks that question. You begin with one habit. Not a dozen, not a reinvention, just one faithful step. Maybe it's a 20-minute walk each morning, or learning how to strengthen your pelvic floor. Maybe it's eating fewer processed foods, or finally asking your doctor to check your testosterone. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent. Because over time, those small steps start to stitch something back together. You begin to feel less afraid, less invisible. You start feeling present. The firmness improves. The sensation sharpens. Not in leaps, but in steady gains. And the way you see yourself, the way you show up in the world, begins to shift. Now let me give you a few practical things that have worked for hundreds of men I've cared for. Number 1, circulation. Without blood flow, nothing else works. Eat more beets, dark leafy greens, olive oil, walk daily, stretch. Stop smoking if you still do. And if you snore, get tested for sleep apnea. Oxygen matters, especially at night. Number 2, testosterone. It's not a magic pill, but if your levels are low, correcting that can support every part of your sexual health, from tissue integrity to nerve sensitivity. Number 3, pelvic strength. These muscles lie beneath the surface, but they do the heavy lifting. Strong pelvic floor muscles support firmer erections, better angle, even improved bladder control. And number 4, inflammation. If your gut is inflamed, your blood vessels are too. Limit refined sugars. Avoid excessive alcohol. Eat for longevity, not just pleasure. You don't have to master all of this today. But if you start with one of them and stick with it, your body will respond because it wants to. And it's never too late. I've seen men in their 70s rebuild their function not just physically, but emotionally. They smile again. They reach for their spouse without hesitation. They stop feeling like they're fading and start feeling like they're here. And if you're listening to this, thinking you've waited too long, I want to gently challenge that belief. Because the worst part of aging isn't the body's decline. It's the silence that surrounds men. The silence that makes you believe you're the only one. You're not. Hundreds of thousands of men feel the same. They just don't say it out loud. They joke, they hide, they deflect. But beneath the humor is a quiet ache and a deep desire to return to form. You can. You still have time. Even if your erections are softer, even if you've lost some sensation, even if you've stopped trying, your body is still listening. So choose one thing, just one, and let that choice become a habit. Let that habit become a rhythm, and let that rhythm carry you back to yourself. I've spent over 40 years walking this road with men, and what I've learned is this. Healing is never about going back. It's about returning to who you were beneath the noise. You are not broken. You are not done. You are still capable of strength, of closeness, of dignity. And if this message touched you, perhaps, share it quietly, as it was shared with you. Because someone out there, maybe your brother, your neighbor, or a friend who hasn't spoken in months, needs to hear that he's not alone either. And if you'd like more conversations like this, soft, grounded, made just for men like you, you're welcome to subscribe. I'll be here when you're ready. Take care of yourself. Truly.